So today I'm going to change the rear brakes on this X5. It's a 35i, and I did the front a while ago. That video is out there, so I'm going to do the rear brakes, the rotors and the pads. So I'll step through that. Alright, so step one is just to go ahead and take the tire off. So I'm here at the back of the car, and I've got a 17 millimeter socket on my breaker bar, and I already loosened these, so once you get all 5 of them off, just go ahead and take off the tire, and then we'll start attacking the brakes. Alright, so now that we got the tire off, the caliper is right here, and then the brake pads are sitting right in here. Pretty worn down right now, and there's no wear sensor on the driver's side. It looks like it's on the passenger side, so when I get to the passenger side, I'll share that. So one of the first things I'm going to do is just go ahead and take this little set screw out. It is, I think, an Allen key type, so let me figure out what number that is, and we'll get to it. Alright, so what we have is a number 6 Allen head, 6 millimeter. So make sure that's in there well, and then go ahead and loosen it up. So be careful though, you have to use the right size, otherwise you could strip it, or if you're not all the way into the little set screw, then you could end up stripping it too. So just make sure you're set in there nicely before you start turning. Alright, so now that set screw is out of the way, and then the next thing you can do is go ahead and take the caliper bolts off. So on the back side of the caliper, there's a little dust cover on mine, so you can take the bolt off here, and then on the bottom you got the same setup, little dust cover and a bolt in there. So again, you're looking at an Allen head type of socket, and the number 7 is what fits in there, so 7 millimeter. So let me get that on there and start loosening those up. Alright, so I went ahead and loosened up the caliper bolts. Just pull the heads out a little bit out of this rubber boot here. That way you know that the bolt's not sitting inside the bracket. So that'll go ahead and loosen up this right here, this caliper, and you can go ahead and take the caliper off and move it out of the way. So typically what I use is a big screwdriver or some kind of pry bar. Just go ahead and put it between the caliper bracket and the caliper, and then go ahead and pry it so the caliper pulls away. So do that on the top and the bottom, and then you should be able to remove the caliper. Before you do that though, there's this spring here in the front, so you can see the spring is holding the caliper in place. So I'm going to go ahead and take that out. So you just got to pop this little spring thing out from the back here. It's sitting in these holes. A screwdriver or something should be enough to work that out. So let me get that out of the way, and then we'll pull the caliper back. All right, just going back to this spring clip. So inside this hole there's a little hook. So the easiest way to do it is just to stick a screwdriver in, pull back on the hook, and then go ahead and pry it out. So there it is. So we got the spring clip out of the way, and now the caliper is loose, so you can go ahead and just pull the caliper off. So now what you can see are the 2 brake pads, and we'll go ahead and replace those. But before I get into that, we're also gonna remove the rotor. So this guy right here has got to come off, but can't come off until we take this bracket off. So let me get to that. There's 2 bolts on the back side of the bracket. They're usually a decent size, so I see them right here. If you can see me, here we go. I can see them right here. So these are the Torx type bolts. So I do have that tool. So let me go figure out which one it is, and then we'll get to removing those. So then we can take off this bracket right here. All right, so I'm working to take off this caliper bracket, and it's an E18 on the back side. So you've got one down here and one right up here. I just had an issue where I couldn't get the breaker bar in the right place because this control arm here is in the way. So what I had to do was go ahead and put the jack underneath the control arm and push it up. I'm on jack stands over here, so by pushing that up, it gave me the room here to put the breaker bar in. Before, this was hanging down further, and I couldn't get the socket fully onto the head of the bolt, which would have probably stripped it if I kept trying. So so it's an E18 on the back side for both of those, so I'll go ahead and start loosening those up. All right, so I loosened both of those up. I was able to do that. Now just go ahead and pull them out, and you'll see the bracket is now loose. So just finish up over here, taking this one off. And then the bracket, and then the bracket comes right out. So got the bracket out, so now we're set up to be able to pull the rotor off, which I could tell it's loose, so it's not going to take too much convincing to get it off there. But if you do, you can always use a dead blow type of hammer and hit it at the top and bottom, and go around the outsides to go ahead and loosen it, and then pull it off. So the emergency brake is actually inside that housing on the back side, so it'll give a little resistance, but you have to make sure you don't have the emergency brake on, so you can go ahead and pull that off. So there it is. Pulled off the old rotor, and you can see these are the shoes for the emergency brakes, so they're drum brakes. Mine are pretty good. They're not too worn. I don't really use the emergency brake unless I'm parked, so I'm just going to go ahead and leave those alone. Now we'll get to reversing the process, getting the new rotors on and the new pads on. So I got everything I need here to do the rear brakes. Again, went to FCP Euro, got the Zimmerman Z-coated rotors, which are in that box, and then the Akabono brake pads. So we're going to try those this time. They're ceramic brake pads. So I got the kit with the Akabonos. The last time I did the front brakes on this car, I used, I think, TRWs, but they create a lot of brake dust, and the Akabonos on my other car don't create much, so we're going to go ahead and try those this time. Also the wear sensor, that needs to go on the passenger side, so that's everything I needed. Got it from FCP Euro as a kit, and I think it was around $280 or $90 for the rear kit. So before I go ahead and put the new rotor on, I just wanted to take this wire brush and clean up around the outside. That's where the rotor's going to sit, so I'll put some of this anti-seize that I have around there, but I just wanted to clean it up first. When I took it off, it was sticking a little bit in this area, so to keep that from happening, just use the anti-seize and also wire brush clean it up before you put the new one on. Alright, so now that I got that cleaned up a bit, I put some anti-seize on here, so you don't have to use a lot. You don't want to use a lot because then it'll just fling all over the place when you start driving. So just enough to coat around the outside, and that should keep it from getting stuck on there in the future. So let me finish painting that up, and then we'll get the rotor. All right, so here we go. We got that all taken care of. Anti-seize around the outside. So now I'm just gonna pick up the rotor and drop it in place. All right, so it's on there. You just got to spin it to line up the holes. So there it is. So once you get the holes all lined up, go ahead and grab your set screw. You can put that in place. And again, that was the 6mm Allen head. So let's go ahead and tighten that down. Doesn't have to be too tight, but you just want to get it tight enough, and that's pretty good to hold that in place. All right, so we got that in place. Next thing to do is to go back to putting on the caliper bracket. So bracket goes on the same way it came off. So you're going to have it in this position and put on the back side. So let me line up those holes and then get those E18 Torx head bolts in place. All right, so I got the caliper bracket in place. I just have one bolt slightly in, so I'm going to go ahead and put the second one in too. Just got to line up the hole. I put a little anti-seize on these too, because over time these can be a pain to get off if you ever have to get in here and change out your rotors again. So, I'm going to go ahead and line that up and then torque down both of these bolts. All right, so now that I got the caliper bracket on, both those bolts are down. Bracket's where it needs to be. The brake rotor looks pretty clean, but I'm just going to hit it quick with some of this brake parts cleaner, just to make sure it stays nice and clean. And you can see that coating that's on there. So when you first take the car out, the coating will get worn away right here, and in a matter of a mile or two from the brake pads, which is normal, and the coating stays everywhere else so that you don't get corrosion throughout the winter or in the rain after that happens. So I'm gonna go ahead and put the caliper bracket on after I just clean it up a little bit. So what I gotta do now is go ahead and take the caliper, pull out the old brake pads. So one's just sitting in there, so that one comes right out, and then this second one actually has a little retainer, and it holds itself inside the piston. So there's the little retainer. You just push that in with the new one, and it stays inside the piston. The other thing I have to do is push the piston back. So I have a special tool that's going to go ahead and push this piston back in, because the new brake pads are significantly thicker and are taking up more room. So you got to push that piston back before you can get the new brake pads in. So you can see how worn the brake pads were. So on the top of this video you have the old one, and then on the bottom you have the new one. So quite a bit of wear, but I've never changed the rear brake pads on or rotors on this car, and there's 86,000 miles on it. So lasted a while, but it's time. So so let me get to putting the piston back inside the piston cylinder. So here's the caliper tool set I'm going to use. Pretty sure I got this on Amazon quite a while ago to make this part of the process a little bit easier. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to need this for setting up with this piece, and probably this piece right here. So I'm going to put these together. It's pretty simple. This just goes right over. This just goes right over that, and then this piece ends up going right on the end. Actually, it's going to go this way. So what that's going to do is push the piston in. So that's going to be right there. And this is going to be set in here. So show you that just like this. So that's how that gets set up. And then as this starts turning, this threaded end is going to start pushing the piston back using this right here on the end. So I'm going to start tightening that up, and I'll show you what it looks like. All right, so there it is. It's tight now. So as you keep turning this handle, the caliper starts getting pushed in. So you want to depress the piston all the way in as far as you can go, because again, those new brake pads are pretty thick, and you need a lot more space here to be able to put the brake pads in and then be able to get them onto the rotor. So let me finish pushing the caliper in. So now that I got the caliper pushed into where it needs to be, I'm going to go ahead and grab the new brake pads. So we'll put this one in first. Probably need two hands to do that, but so I'll put that one in, and then we'll set the new one for the other side in place, and then we'll go ahead and set it on the rotor where it needs to be within the bracket. And then we'll just have to put these two bolts in place, tighten those down, and then we should be done with this side. So let me get to it. All right, so we got the pads in place where they need to be. We've got these bolts pushed back, so that way they'll be able to fit on the bracket the way they need to. So all you got to do is lift it up and go ahead and put it right on here. My brake pads is in the way. So there you go, fits right on. And then line up the bolts in the back right here and right here where they need to be, and then start torquing those down. And those are the 7mm Allen wrench. So I'm gonna go ahead and grab that and then start putting those in place. Going back to the caliper, I just took it down for a second, but what came with the kit here is this this grease. So what people tend to do is put a little bit of this grease right here on the flats of each one of the brake pads, because the brakes are gonna want to squeeze in and out, and it's gonna keep it from making any kind of noise or having any issues in the future too with any kind of corrosion. So it's not a bad idea, so I'm going to do that and then get back to bolting down the caliper. So we got our caliper bolts in place. Don't forget these little rubber caps that actually go inside where the bolts are, so you got to put those two things back. There we are. You just slide right in. And then we also have this spring clip that goes on the front here. So I might need two hands to get this on. Sometimes it's a little tricky, but make sure that these little clips here are sitting inside this hole. And it should be doing its job of retaining the brake pad. So let me get that. So to get this clip back in, I just put it on loosely. So I put one piece at the top in, and then it's sitting up against here. And you can see I've got to get this piece in. So I'm going to take this screwdriver and just push back and in, and that's it. And that got it in place. So now your spring clip is in place, your caliper is on, and the next thing is just to go ahead and get the tire back on, and then we'll do it all again on the other side. The other side is going to have a wear sensor, so when I get to the wear sensor, I'll just show that part of the video and add it in. So now I'm on the passenger side, and I just wanted to show where the wear sensor was. So I pulled this caliper off, and if you flip it around, you can see the wear sensor actually goes right down into a small groove on the brake pad. So you should be able to just go ahead and pop that wear sensor out of there without too much trouble. I'm going to see if I can maybe just get a small screwdriver in there and push it up, and that should be able to get it out. Alright, so that did it. I was able to push up with the small screwdriver, and now that wear sensor is free. So from the back side of the caliper where you see the wire coming in, you can now move the wear sensor out of the way. So if I take a look at it, could have been wearing a little bit, but this wasn't quite enough to set off the sensor alert. So now I got to track the wear sensor back. You can see the wire goes in here, and then I pulled this back a little bit, but this is some kind of retainer for two different wires that are running back here. So it's gonna run across this, and then up and over and back towards me, and then inside here must be where the connection is. So I might have to pull this little rivet and possibly pull one of the screws from the bottom here to get enough room to get a hand in there to get to the connection where the wear sensor, the electrical connection is. So let me start working on that. All right, so I pulled this little piece off that is going underneath and is used to retain speed sensor wire. So then I was able to pull the wire out of that little bracket. So then the next thing is just keep following it, and this is it here on the back side. So it's in this bracket up here. So it's just a little channel that it goes into. So should be able to just pull down on the sensor, and that's gonna go ahead and pop that wire out of there. So let me do that. I think I need 2 hands. All right, so that was it. I was able to pull that down, and then you can see the wire for the speed sensor is the one running on the top. So these little clips, this one, this one, this one, and this one, all need to be undone so you can then get the wire out. So looks like there's a little tab here that I can pull towards me, and that should release so that I can go ahead and get the wires out. So let me work that. All right, so the tab releases from the top. So I've got a little screwdriver in here, and I just pull it towards me, and it releases that tab. So you got these two here, and then you got these two in here. Pretty easy to just let them get unclipped. And then again, we're working on the top one. So pull the top one out. Now I got to figure out where the connection is inside here. So let me see the easiest way to get there. All right, so now I'm looking at the back. So I do see a screw or a little bolt right there. So it's a 9mm. So I'm going to go ahead and disconnect that. See if that gives me enough room to pull back this little splash guard, so I can see where that electrical connection for the speed sensor is. So I'm lying under the car, just where I took that one screw off, and you pull this back, and there is enough room to be able to now see where the speed sensor gets connected. So this little box right here has 2 little clips which I took off. Again, similar to the other one, just get a screwdriver and pull this forward towards you. So there's 2 of those, and then inside that is where your speed sensor is connected. So I'm gonna have to go ahead and pull that down, at least the speed sensor connection down, and then go ahead and disconnect it. So let me get to that. All right, so I went ahead and pulled the speed sensor connection down and out of that box. You can see where it was on the inside the box. So connection is right here. So you just have to pull this tab down, and then pull the 2 pieces apart, and then you can reroute the new one and get it into place. All right, so I connected up my new speed sensor and then closed the box up. So the new one is in there, and then I'm just gonna route it back. So here it is, and follow the way the old one is. So before I fully take the old one off, I'm just gonna follow how it's routed through here with the new one. Also, before you route it, don't forget to put this little guy back. This is the little sheet metal screw here that's holding your splash guard down. So I'm gonna put that in right now. All right, so I went ahead and got the cable in to this retainer, and you can see the old one is still here. So the old one went into the top, so I'm going to go ahead and put the new one into the top, and then in the back you can see it goes around and over this one that's already here. So I'm gonna follow that same path as we route this through, noting that it goes over and on the other side of the cable that's already in place there. So we'll go ahead and run this through here, and clip it on. Same for this side. All right. So now I gotta get it up and over on the other side. Up and over on the other side of this cable. So just push the whole thing through. And then pull it back down. All right, so now we're on the correct side. And then you can see this little groove that's right here is what we're gonna slide in and push up, and that'll get it into the groove that's on the back side of this little bracket. So we gotta push it up and get it in there. So I'm probably gonna have to use 2 hands to do that. So let me get to that. All right, so now that I got that right here in place and up onto that bracket, the rest of this needs to be routed. So it comes down under this little control arm, and then it's gonna go into this retainer that's underneath. So the way it goes in here is just like that. There's a little tab here that is going to help hold it in place, and then there's also one, which it's tough to see from this angle, but there's also one in the front here that'll help hold it in place. So once you got that where it needs to be, you got to grab this piece, which we took off in the beginning, and that goes back on underneath that retaining bracket that's there. So go ahead and snap this piece in place. Looks like it's getting there. I think I'm gonna need 2 hands to be able to snap it in the front and the back. So let me snap. All right, so we got that bracket on, and then there's 2 tabs on the other side that we had released. So we're just gonna pull that one down, snap it in, and then the same thing right here in the back. Just go ahead and pull that down and snap it back on. And I just want to show this quick. So you can see the old wear sensor and the new wear sensor side by side. The new wear sensor has a little rounded area, and that's what starts to touch the rotor and wear away as the brake pads get close to being completely worn out. So mine was rubbing the wear sensor, but again, it wasn't quite enough to set off the wear sensor warning, but it was pretty close. It was almost there. All right, so in the final step of finally getting the wear sensor installed on the passenger side. So I've got the caliper with the brake pad in place. So the wear sensor, if you remember from just a few minutes ago, is going to sit inside the little groove in that brake pad. So here's the old one. It's in place like this, and that groove is right there. So just make sure when you put it in that groove that you have that side with the little bump of the wear sensor facing towards the rotor. So in this case, it's going to be facing towards the other brake pad. So that way, when it does wear, it's hitting the rotor in the right place. So so this is just going to sit right inside, and you can probably just slide it in with a finger, and then you're good to go. So I just have to push that down a little bit more, and then all set with the wear sensor. All right, so the wear sensor's in where it needs to be. You can see it from this side. So there it sits. So one thing also I noticed when I was taking the caliper off and the wear sensor off is the sensor was actually routed, in my case, where the wire was wrapped around, and the little grease fitting here kind of held the wire out of the way. So I'm going to do that same thing when I go ahead and put this back. So so that's what it should look like. Keeps it tucked out of the way, and wear sensors in place. So I'm going to go ahead and finish up the rest of this side, get the rotor on, get the pads on, get the wheel on, and then should be all done. All right, so I'm now finished. I got the wheel back on. You can see the brakes in there, and again, that Z corrosive coating is going to come off right where the brake pads are going to be touching the rotors once you start driving. I had that on another car a while back, and when I took it out, I feel a little vibration for like a mile or two, and that was just the coating coming off the rotors, and then everything was fine. So I guess don't get alarmed if the first mile or 2 miles where you're using the brakes, you're going to end up feeling a little bit of a vibration. But that's it, all set. So that is rear brakes, so pads, rotors, and wear sensor. Hopefully it helps.